Hi guys, this is Equine Palette and I'm going to be teaching you how to digitize eyes for plushies using Embird embroidery software. I'm not affiliated with Embird, but I do own a registered copy, which is what I'll be using to teach you, as well as the Studio plugin, which is bought separately, which is what you'll need if you want to digitize things from scratch. So we'll get started by launching our Studio plugin, and we start off with our little interface here. The first thing that I need to do is import the reference image that I'll be using, which is a sketched picture on the pattern. Now this is the way that I like to go about it. I like to have a sketch of or something drawn directly onto the pattern and then a separate image with a ruler or some sort of measurement device with tick marks so I can see exactly how big that eye is, and that'll come into play later. So I have my image here. And the first thing I need to do is I realize this isn't taken perfectly, so the eye is kind of crooked, but Embird allows you to rotate things. So I use the rotate to vertical under the image tab, and it took me forever to figure out how to use this, but basically the bottom and the top, this line is how the axis of the image is supposed to be. So I want this to become my straight line. It's hard to really explain, but I'm not really good at explaining it. But you can see that once I rotate it using that tool, my eye is relatively straight. So now that my image is straight, the first thing that I'm going to do is trace a relative outline of what I'm going to be working with, so I can get kind of a base. I just use a straight stitch. It's going to disappear later, so it's not really important. It just gives me a baseline shape to work from. Now it doesn't really matter if you want to sit here and try to match this up to the start point, you can, but it doesn't really matter. You can end it anywhere you want to on the picture, because this little lovely button here is the close edges button, and it will send it the end of the line straight back to the beginning. And that's what I usually do, because sometimes whenever I match it up, it just doesn't work perfectly. So I'll end that, and now I have this little relative outline. When I'm doing eyes, I also like to make things nice and symmetrical. So I again grab my line tool, start it off really anywhere, it doesn't matter, and the shape. Now this allows you to create perfect shapes, triangles, rectangles, stars, etc. I usually do the ellipse with 8 elements, which means there's going to be 8 nodes on the shape, and that allows me to kind of create a perfect oval rather than trying to trace out this exactly when this isn't a perfect oval itself. So that'll give me a basic idea of what this shape is. Now I'm going to copy paste this to get a second circle that I'll use for the pupil, and it's just Control-C, Control-V. I like to do that rather than over here and copy the object wherever that copy paste, because this copies it directly over top of the other image, versus if I copy paste it down here, copy, paste, well, that time it actually worked. Usually there's something else that you can do that it doesn't quite do that. But so I've got this second shape here, so I'll just size it down so it's the exact same kind of shape. And I like to center it in that, as if this little shape here is my eyeball. So I will place it where I need this to be. I might scale it, I might play with it. The more you work with it, the more you learn how these sort of things work. But that right there seems pretty good. So now that I've got these basic shapes, I need to create one more for the eye shine. Now I'm going to rotate this because this eye shine is kind of sideways. So I hit the transformation window, and this automatically pops up the rotation tool. And you can rotate it by however many degrees. A lot of times I'll just go to 5 and slowly do it 5 degrees at a time until I get the exact kind of shape that I want. And I personally like there to be a little bit of a disconnect between the iris and the pupil, or not pupil, but iris and the eyeshine. So I will make sure that there's a little bit of space left between there. And that. Play with the shape until I'm happy with it. That looks pretty good. So now I've got kind of my reference markers on here. I can actually start doing the objects. I usually start with the white. Don't really know why. It doesn't matter what you start with because you can reorder things later. I always want to leave plenty of room for overlapping. So this is where my iris line is going to be, but I'm about 2-3 millimeters in, and that will make sure that there's no gapping in my design. And again, I just kind of set that up there because it doesn't matter. As soon as I hit my close edges button, it'll send it right to the end. And it's much easier to grab if I set it up there. So, there's my shape for my sclera, the white part of the eye. And I used the object, solid object button to do that. Sometimes I like to go ahead and color things, which is a right-click color. I usually define color. You can pick colors from the image if you digitize from a direct picture of a character or an eye or a digital picture, and you need to pick perfect colors, but a lot of times I'll just see that end up being gray, so a lot of times I'll end up just picking the white. So now I need to go ahead and do this, the eyeshine, and these shapes don't have to be absolutely perfect. It's really only the outer edges of the design and the last top piece that needs to be perfect. And sometimes if my eyeshine is close enough to my white, I probably should have made these all in one sort of image. White. Now that I've got these, I'm going to go ahead and group them together and order them to the back. And that's going to put them below all my reference pieces. If you need to adjust the pull compensation, the stitch direction, anything of these, you have to ungroup them, otherwise it doesn't pick them all up. But I can scroll over both of them, hit the parameters button, and this brings up a little interface where I can adjust pull compensation, density, stitch direction, make things auto-columned or not, which is something I'll explain when I get to the iris. But for me, I have this thing about 40 degrees, so I like to set my stitch direction at 40 degrees. And Embird is kind of weird. The smaller your number, the higher your density. Whenever I'm doing solid fills, I usually go with a 2.7, and I adjust my pull compensation later. But I can go ahead and generate those stitches, and I'll see those. You don't have to generate them if you don't want to. Most of the time, I just kind of leave it until the end to generate everything together. But now I've got my whites. Now I need to do my pupil. So once again, this outline is where my pupil is going to go. And so I want a little bit of overlap because my iris is going over top of these two sections. So I'll leave myself a couple of millimeters of room here. I'm going to ramble a little bit, guys. Sorry about that. I'm not a professional video maker by any stretch of the imagination. Now whenever I get to this portion where the white is directly onto the black is going to be at the edge of that design, so I won't leave any overlap there because the black is what I'm going to use to define that shape. And if any of this doesn't make sense, please just ask me in the comments section. Now, this shape, I just did one node there, and it's not as smooth as I would like it to be. There's, as you can see if I zoom in here, there's a little bit of leeway there. It doesn't really matter where I stretch this node. I'm gonna not be able to hit that full line. So there's a little add node button up here where you can add an extra little square node and allow you to turn that one big wide section into two sections. I'm going to adjust this up here because I'm picky pants. Oh shoot. Don't forget which is your start point and which is your end point when you do that. There we go. So now I have my pupil shape. Go ahead and color that. And I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit the control button, which allows me to select multiple things at once. And I'm going to order all of those to the back. So now that I've got my whites and my pupil, I'm going to go ahead and do my iris, which I'm going to use another solid fill tool object. And this is the eyeliner part of this particular plush's eye, so I'm going to start it about here. As long as I'm within that, because this eyeliner is going to cover up this rough edge over here. And now this is the one object that comes last as far as this section goes, and the whole of the eye. So I'm going to go directly on my lines because I've already got the overlap that I need from the black and the white. Hit my extra node button. Stretch that out to make a perfect shape. And you can adjust these curves as you go. You can adjust them all at the end. I like to adjust them as I go. Now I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and finish that object. Now I've got this eye. I think the color of this one is supposed to be green. That doesn't really matter because I can select the proper color for the iris. As long as it's not black or white, it won't blend into the other two, that's fine. Now, for my irises in particular, I like to do what's called a column stitch, which is kind of like a big white satin stitch that goes over everything. So I can go into my parameters and do an auto column, which automatically generates it. You can do it manually, but it's a little bit more difficult, and I'll explain that in another video. But for the columned irises, I like to do a density of 2.5 to 2.0. 2.0 is really dense. It's the lowest it'll let you go for an auto column, but I like to do about 2.5. I'm going to go ahead and generate that to make sure that it has the wide stitches that I need and it's not some sort of wonky shape. Everything looks pretty good there. And I can go ahead and generate all of these stitches at once just by scrolling over to see. Now, obviously I forgot to fix the parameters on this pupil, so we'll go back and do that. Fix that really quick. Regenerate those stitches. And I can gauge a general idea of how this is going to look by going down here and hitting the 3D button. There's two of them. The first 3D kind of lets you see the shine. The second kind of makes it a little bit more flat. I personally like to see the shine. And so that's I can hide all these using the little eyeball button, and that's the general shape that I've got. It doesn't really give you a lot of indication, but it shows me that there's no gapping so far, and the eye shine is coming through really lovely and nice. So I'll switch back to the normal view and turn my little images back on. I don't really need these anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and delete those just by hitting the delete button. And now I've just got to do the outline around the rest of the eye. You can do it using a manual solid object, or you can do it using the stitch outline button. I think it's an outline button. Whenever I'm doing small outlines or something that doesn't need variation, I will go ahead and use the outline button. But if something is like got some sort of shade to it, like that eyeliner up there, then I will use the solid, which I'll do that in a second. And I don't really need to go all the way and reattach that to the end, because that eyeliner is going to cover this part. So I'll go ahead and say yes to that. Color it the proper color. And if you just leave it default, as you can see over, I don't know if I can pull that out of me, it says it's a single stitch. And if you generate that, it's going to show you that it's a single stitch. I don't want it a single stitch, I needed a satin stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to do that. Default is 2mm wide. I never want to go below 1mm, just because knowing from embroidery, if you're working on any sort of plushie, most likely you're using minky or fleece, and machines don't like anything less than 1mm. So I usually don't go past 1.5 or smaller. And I can go ahead and generate that. It's going to look a little wide here. I haven't resized this yet, and I can adjust that sizing as needed. I generally leave the density of satin stitches as they are, which is 4.0, I do believe. And now I'll go ahead and delete this little outline because I've already got my basic shape. Go ahead in here and finish this up. For this, and I'll go ahead and set up, because you can set it up before. You don't have to go back into the parameters if you don't want to. 2.5 density. If I want to go ahead and generate those stitches, I can just hit this little generate stitches button and it'll automatically do that for me. Go ahead and do it in black, and now I can see I've got this general shape. Now this lets me know that this is a relatively small image here, so we might adjust this. We're obviously going to adjust this even if it stays this size, because there's some funky looking thickness there. So I will go out here and pull up my other image of the... You can scale it to fit your current height, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And this image shows me that it is 5/16 inches. Embird uses millimeters. I know that there is a way to fix that setting, but I have now become used to metrics, even though I'm American, because we should be on the metric system anyway. So 1 5/16 inch to millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and convert that. 1 5/16 inches to millimeters. 33.3375. So 33.3 millimeters. Tall is how tall I need this. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll over, grab all these, hit my transform button, and do the resize object selection. You can also skew. I don't even know what those other two are because I don't use them. So we're going to scale this up to 33.3. And if you have an exact number, you can also hit this little button and it will pop up and you can type it in. Check, apply, and it's going to go ahead and resize it for me, generate all my stitches. And how lovely that looks. Gorgeous. Now, something that's really frustrating, especially if you're working with a stretchy fabric like Minky, is this looks really nice like this, but I can guarantee you if I were to go ahead and embroider this, this would have a big gap down here because it does not, Minky is not a fun fabric to work with, and the stretch really warps embroidery. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all of my solid objects, go into my parameters, and set my pull composition up. I usually start at 0.8 to 1 millimeter of stretch compensation. We'll start at 0.8 and hope for the best. And now that I've done that, you can see that the edge of that design has dipped out a little bit, and sometimes you can see the outskirts of it, but it's going to embroider differently. And I know that this is going to shrink a little bit as well, so we're going to increase it. With big wide satin stitches and column objects, I often just set the pull composition a little bit lower because it doesn't really need a whole lot. And I don't usually adjust the pull compensation of these auto-generated satin stitches because I do want it to be a little bit thinner, because this is a little thick, and when it embroiders it will be a little thinner and it will match up nice and lovely. Things you learn over time. And now, as you can see, after I did that pupil, there's a little bit of a disconnect here, but the shrinkage is going to fix that, and I can even combat that a little bit more by adding 1 or 2 pull compensation to the satin stitch. So now you can see I have this big, beautiful, lovely eye that is perfectly sized as per my image here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and you can hit this compile and put in the Embird editor button, or you can go up here and you can save it. A lot of times I'll go ahead and save. I'm just going to save this to the desktop right now and sort it out later. And that's going to save this in the Embird outline format, which is this file type right here. If I open this EOF file up, it's going to open up editor and it's going to give me this. It's not going to give me an automatically generated. It's going to give me all of these lines that I've made, all the shapes, all the different types, and everything. So now that I've saved it, always save your work, guys, I can go ahead and compile it. And this particular design is going to be saved in PES format, but it can save in all these lovely different formats for all the different embroidery machines. This one's PES. Just say okay to all these things. And it's going to tell me that some of the colors are a little bit off. I don't really mess with that. And you can title it in the file in case you're putting your designs on the internet or whatever. I generally don't. And now this is the Embird editor, and I can actually go in here if I needed to, which I sometimes do if I can't get a satin stitch to auto column correctly, or let's say the automatically generated auto column here sent these stitches this way or whatever. You can go in here and actually edit it stitch by stitch using the editor and doing whatever you need to move the individual stitches around. This one doesn't need any extra altering. I'd say 99% of the files I make don't need any extra altering. And this can also allow you to see the 3D views and everything. I'll explain density and everything in a later video, but you don't want tons of red. I don't even really know what the X-ray does. But yeah, so I now have this lovely image, and I'm going to go ahead and use it for embroidery. So I hope you guys liked. I'll have some more Embird tutorial videos out soon, hopefully. If you like what you see, please subscribe, leave a nice little like and a comment, and all those other YouTube-y things that you're supposed to do. Have an awesome day, guys.